we go. Welcome everyone to BT's Fly Tying Friday. We're coming to you live from Boise, Idaho, where tonight we're mixing hair and hackle fibers in dry flies, and we're going to be talking a lot about proportions. Before we leave this slide, let's take a look at the three flies on screen. On the left, it is not a royal wolf, just so you know. And then we have a comparadun and a polydun. But too often, the fly on the left would be mistaken for a royal wolf, and in fact, it's a hair-wing royal coachman. But anyway, I'm Al Beatty, and this is my lovely wife, Gretchen. Tonight, I'll be your presenter, and Gretchen will be running the IT department. Let's talk about materials, because we got a stack of them here tonight. And so I can get this out of the way right off the bat. You know, we use static guard every time we tie flies, and no different tonight. I'm spraying everything down. But as you can see, we've got all the stuff that we need to tie the three flies that you saw on the screen. Peacock, we've got deer hair, squirrel. There was nothing mentioned in the recipes about squirrel. And I've got some squirrel tonight, and we're probably going to slip a surprise ingredient in on you, and well, you'll figure out what to do with it. And we have hackle for the tails. We've got golden pheasant down here, and some hackle for the dry fly. I'll just set that over here so it's ready when I need it. And I'll get my first thread. So here are the recipes that we'll be dealing with tonight. It's pretty straightforward. You should have all received them if you got your download off of Facebook or you received the email from us. We're going to use dry fly hooks. I'm going to use a mix of thread and floss on this fly. The tail is golden pheasant tippets. The body is peacock and red floss mixed in thirds. Hackle is brown. Thread is brown, and some other stuff. And the second fly that we're going to tie, I'll just go through that now so we don't forget. But here is the recipe for it. It's comparadun. We'll do a hair wing version and a poly version. For those who don't want to mess around with hair, the last fly in the session will be the poly one. But anyway, it's going to have a dry fly hook, gray thread. The tail will be hackle fibers or maybe a surprise material. We're going to use a rib optional thread, floss, and wire. And how could I have a surprise when I've already told you it's going to be squirrel tail? I mean, okay. Anyway, gray dubbing, deer body hair with poly yarn. It could be one or the other, and we're going to show you both and thread. But let's get back to us for the moment here. I'm sorry, sometimes my IT department doesn't respond like they're supposed to around here. I don't know what we're going to do, but anyway, let's get over here and get this focus fly out of here. For those of you that are joining that are interested in doing your own Zoom, a focus fly is a real handy thing to have. And I want you to notice something about this one. Let me zoom in. And I want you to notice the way that I tied the body. The body has got ridges in it. That's on purpose, not because I wanted to make a mistake, but because I wanted to see how the focus was at that focal plane, how the wings are. And you'll notice that even some fibers of hair sticking up there and frayed thread and everything in the head. It's all there for a reason. It's all part of the focusing process. But all of that aside, you don't really give a darn about that. You're here to see us tie flies. And so let's take a look at the roadmap. Let me just put this guy in the hook in the vise. All right. A royal coachman hair wing. I want you to take notice of one thing. Let me zoom in here and get my pointer. While the camera is settling down, I'll get the pointer. I want you to take a look at the body right here. That body is the same back here underneath this peacock, and it's the same underneath this peacock right here. Otherwise, I'd have a big bulge up here just before we go into the hackle and into the wings. Well, that isn't by accident. In fact, that's the purpose of tonight's session. Let me back off for just a sec, and let me swap out of our fly that we call the roadmap. This is the direction that we're going. The road we're going to take us towards that fly. But let me get a fly up here. It's not a fly, actually. It's a partly done fly. This body is tied the way most folks, myself included, for a lot of years, tied any hair wing fly if I happen to mix it with a hackle fiber tail or any other slender material tail like microfibets and a bunch of others that it could be. Let me zoom in and get my pointer again. And while the camera is stopped shaking, I want you to notice what large shoulders this fly has in comparison to the waist.
Interesting.
Now, I would love to have shoulders like that in comparison to a waist like that. And when I was a young man, I did. But something happened. And it all went somewhere else. We're not going to talk about where. None of this laughing and all this other. Gretchen, stop this. You're leading him into bad things. My point being here is that these are what we consider properly proportioned wings. Let me zoom back so you can see that better. But they create a pretty large bundle here. And remember now, our goal is to get a nicely proportioned fly without showing that. And we have to do something with that bundle. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to cut that in half and put it somewhere else. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start. I am going to start just like we do with all of our flies. We use our thread to mark the location of different parts of the fly. In this case, the wing is going to stand up right there, 1/3 back from the hook eye. All right, now let's wrap back a little ways. And you already know that whenever we tie hackle fibers on a hook, the only time we don't have a thread base is when we are doing a hackle fiber tail. And that's no different with this. But I'm going to show you how to make a mistake with the tail and then how to fix it. First off, we've got a feather here, and you'll notice we got some really nice dark here. And as we get over here, the dark tips start to go away. Well, as much as I hate to throw those away, we got to throw them away. If you try to save them, and you can, they just don't look real good on the hook. It looks pretty pathetic, actually. But if you're just doing fishing flies, it probably doesn't make any difference. And I'll just get on the other side here and strip those off as well. All right, good. Now here's where you make a mistake. All the other hackle fiber tails that you tie, you just grab a bundle of the fibers, pull them out to the side, make sure they're all lined up, grab a hold of them and strip them off, right? And then you get ready to put them on the hook, and we'll measure them for length and start wrapping. And what we have now is, I want you to notice on the feather, the back side of the feather is dull, and the front side of the feather is pretty bright, got some nice colors. And what we have here in the tail right now is a mix of one color and the other color. It's because in the process of grabbing that bundle and sticking it on the hook, we misaligned some of those fibers. Well, the technique I'm going to show you right now is about 80% good, meaning that it don't always work. Sometimes the feather gets a mind of its own, and you're just going to have to get another piece of feather. But I've got a feather I was tying on this afternoon working on this, and I'm going to show you how to tie a bundle of fibers on the hook and then use a technique that we've learned over the last few weeks on Wonder Wings. We're going to use it on keeping the fibers all nicely aligned on this particular kind of tail. Let me start by taking a couple of loose, not loose, snug but not tight turns around the hook. Now, what I want to do is measure that tail. That tail should be equal to the length of the hook shank. And so you can see right there where that tail, how much that tail should be shortened, so it's the length that I want it to be. Well, I'm just going to hold these fibers over here with the left hand and grab the feather with the right hand, and I'll pull those fibers to the length that I want them to be.
Oh.
I hope that was a groan of wonderment or something, or somebody is in serious trouble out there and we better call an ambulance. Anyhow, let's see. That looks like that's going to be just about the right length. Let's see what we got here. Nope, it's going to be too short. So I'm going to back up. I got too carried away with myself talking with you all. I want you to notice also that I'm putting this on my side of the vise. That's because otherwise, when we use a thing called thread torque to reposition our materials. Okay, let me just pull that up now. Now I want to verify my length. And that should be right about, yep, that'll be just about right. So let me wrap gently, not tight, gently towards the back of the hook. And you see how that's holding it all together just real nice? Well, all I want to do is have gentle turns right here. And as I go back, about the third turn going back, I really get into it. I'm really bankering it there. What I used is gentle wraps at the back to keep it under control, and then tight anchoring wraps as I wrap forward. Now we've got this bundle of hair that I just clipped off, and I want you to notice something here. We just sprayed down everything with static guard to get rid of static electricity and blending the tail and the wings together. So what we're going to do is put on a smaller bundle of hair this time than we normally would. In fact, it will be about half as much as we normally do. In fact, that's a little bit too much. And if you're wondering how much, remember how we verified by the gather method: gather here, gather there, gather here, gather there, pinch hard, and that should be less than about half the width of the hook gap as far as the number of fibers in that bundle. Well, I'm going to tie that on for length equal to the length of the hook shank. Tie it on slightly pointed downhill on my side, and then let thread torque place it back on top. Okay, now I'm going to come in from the off side and trim this at a very severe angle. And then wrap all those so they can blend together. Well, I'm going to do just like we normally do when we tie a hair wing. We'll pull up part of the bundle, put a thread wrap in there just to force some of that to stand up. And some more. And then we'll wrap a thread dam right in front. Alrighty, here we go. That got a wild one there. Stick it up here where it belongs. Whoops, got to cut that one off there. Okay, now thread torque is what I use to get this positioned up on top. I just tighten up and roll right up on top of the hook. And I guarantee you, this size 10 is a lot more difficult to tie than like the sizes 16s and 18s, because you're dealing with a heck of a lot less hair. Let me put that hair stacker out of the way for the moment. And we have just, I want you to notice that I have a little bit of that slide by, we'll call it, where they didn't quite line up. So I'll pull those up there where they're supposed to be. And you're looking straight at the wing now. And I'm going to pull them apart now so I can divide them and crisscross between my wings. Take a couple of wraps around the offside wing post and set it in place. Okay, now one of the interesting things about tying this particular wing is on the others where they all are trying to tip forward, you're always pulling the wing back like that, trying to get it to stand up straight. Well, this is sometimes a matter of one wing you pull forward on it and the other one you pull back on it. It just depends on how much pressure you've got in each. But anyway, now we've got a pretty evenly divided set of wings, and they look pretty good. And what I want you to notice, this poor guy right here is old Al. After all of his years and age and everything, his shoulders went somewhere, but they're sure not where they used to be. So we'll just get back here. And I've learned over the years that I'm better off to tie it on here, wrap forward, and now it's time to change. And I'm going to get out some red floss coming out of a bobbin. Never has a problem laying flat out of the bobbin. Okay, and I'm going to wrap right back to the start of that peacock. Now I'm going to wrap back to the back side of my peacock application. And now I'm going to come forward with several turns, and the peacock is pushing the floss forward as it comes forward itself. Okay, now let's grab that, pull it down, and I'd like to keep that strand along the bottom of the hook, or at least more towards the bottom of the hook, as I wrap back to the what I would call the next place to tie it off, or to wrap it. And I'm just going to wrap forward, and now we're going to switch to the black thread, which is what we wanted to end up with anyway. Don't mean that you have to, but that's what we do. We tie all of our white wing flies, if you will, with white thread, and then end up with the black at the very last before we finish the fly. But I want you to notice now that we're wrapping this forward, and we're getting a pretty consistent application between the back bundle of peacock herl and the front one, where if we had the big shoulders, we'd be dealing with a lot larger bundle there at the back. And now we're going to wrap forward. I'm going to come up to the hook point or hook eye, and I'm going to wrap back, a couple, 3 thread turns. I don't want to quite be at the hook eye. And in fact, in my discussing everything with you, I could mess it up. So let me throw in a quick 1/2 inch. What I want to make sure that I do is I'm going to tie one feather off in a slightly rearward location from the other feather. So let's start out with this lower hackle, if you will. I've made it significantly shorter so I wouldn't forget which one was which. You know, when you get older, things like that happens to you. You forget which is which. Now I'm working my way forward, and I'm leaving some gaps as I wrap forward until I reach that point slightly back from the hook eye. Maybe I can turn it so you can see just a little bit better. There you go. You can see that just a little bit better. We've got some room between the hook eye and the feather that I'm tying off right now. Okay, 2 turns. I'll make a 3rd turn. And remember how we dogleg it? Well, we do a modified dogleg on this one. We're just going to wrap some turns, anchoring that. And then I'm going to throw another 1/2 inch in just so I don't bump it and cause things to come apart. I don't normally do that when I'm tying a fly, but we're doing enough talking here and moving around and trying to do things and working over a camera. Now, I always, unlike John did last night, I always trim this one off, but I trim it just so it's a little bit long, because those little fibers that are sticking up there don't hurt a darn thing. They work just fine. Now we're going to go ahead. I like this technique, John. Tying them on in 2 different places. What it does is it gives a smoother application front and back of those wings. Yep, I'm liking that. By the way, John, that's the first time I've done that. I've always tied them in with a crisscross over, but this is I'm liking this, John. This is makes a really good looking fly, especially if you're going to be mounting it under glass or something like that. But anyway, now all right. Now we're getting ready to dogleg our hackle like we always do. And I've got a really less than stellar head on this one, but let's see if we can pull it out. All right, there we go. All right, we'll turn that way. That head looks fairly good. Let's get our whip finish tool out. And we're going to do a good whip finish, starting back on the head, working each subsequent turn closer to the hook eye. All right, we'll trim off the feather, set it down out of the way. readjust my wings, and let's take a look here. Well, that looks pretty good. And that looks pretty good. Thank you, Gretch. Good. I'll put that newly threaded bobbin away. Now, I want to talk to you about something, a little place where you can cheat just a little bit. Now, most of the time, I'm just going to flip this up and over so I can get to the tail a little easier. Normally, I would just take it out of the vise, flip it over, but because I got the vise that I have right here, I am going to just use the ability to double rotate. And what I'm going to do is take a felt tip marker and just slightly accent that one spot. And these guys right here, we don't want much. We just want to, a little bit, that's enough. And don't want to overdo it, but that just kind of touches it up a little bit. And there you go. A couple of easy ways to get a little bit more proportioned body, and a cheater or two that you can do on the tail. All right, and just like we did before, we'll stand this little bundle up a little bit at a time, just like you would if you had a regular wing there. That length looks pretty good. And now you know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and do it rather than waiting and cutting the. Let's try that again. God, I would just love right now to set this camera over in Gretchen's lap so I could do this, but okay. Okay, trim it right even with the bottom of the hook. Allow thread torque to place it up on top. Turn behind, turn in front, a couple of turns, one more behind, and okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, let's go ahead and do a whip finish, and I'm going to show you a close-up of a bad whip and a good whip. And we've got a few new people on tonight. So for the rest of you that have seen this, it's a good time to go get a cup of coffee or a beverage of your choice. I'm going to start by putting a bad whip on, and I'm going to do that like I did it for a whole lot of years. Let me get this moved over just slightly. There we go. Now, a lot of people get up to this point. They've got the hackle wrapped or whatever on their fly, and it's time now to put on a whip finish. And the thread is hanging right at the hook eye. Oh, no big deal. We'll just put a whip finish on, right? Okay, first turn right next to the eye. Next turn, one turn back. Next turn a little further back. Further, further, until it's now time to pull this up. And I want you to see what happens. You see that strand of thread lays across the 5 turns first and then goes under them. I wonder where the weak spot is. See, it just kind of blends in there real nice. And now we're going to just curl this over to make the front part of our wing. And in this case, I'll just bind it into place. And I'll pull my thread back out of the way while I make this trim. And we'll, now that's looking pretty good. We'll bind that in place. Oh, okay, we already know that I'm going to do a good whip, so I'm going to start back on the head area, each turn closer to the hook eye. All right, let's just switch this around so that we can spread out our wing. And I'll guarantee you that'll catch just as many trout as that hair wing version. And you know what? It'll last a lot longer and it never gets waterlogged. One back cast and that's all nice and dry. And there you go. The second, it's the polywing compare done.